So good morning everyone. Today's video I thought it might be helpful if I shared a few tips on how to take better photos of bluebells. I did a video about this a few years ago and there were a few ups and downs. I was shooting on the Fuji system back then. I'm on the Sony now, so I thought today to come down just to a little area that I found. And the bluebells are probably just not at their peak yet. I would say they maybe need another week or maybe a week and a half, but the forecast was good for this morning. We've got lovely light. It's just maybe about an hour and a half after sunrise. So yeah, I thought it would be good if I gave you just a few tips and a few things I find useful, which will hopefully help you get some better bluebell photos. Okay, so tip number one is shoot a pano. What I'm using for the pano is a 70 to 200mm lens, and I have it on the really right stuff, like the pano head. So instead of having to make sure that the tripod is completely level, as long as I have this bit here level, then there's a little lever and I can actually swing around, and this is going to be perfectly level. So it means that when you're stitching your pano together, it's going to be a lot easier. So what I've done actually is, for the pano, I have focused on one of the trees in the foreground. So I'm in at about 100mm or so, and once I've got the focus point, then I've switched the camera over to manual so that my focus isn't going to change throughout the scene. And I'm literally just spinning this around. So I'm taking probably maybe a good 11 shots or so. Now I probably won't need to be as wide as this, but I guess one little thing I find useful when I'm shooting panos is go a little bit further than you need. So if, say, there's a tree in your composition that you want to start with on the left, instead of that being your first shot, just take one slightly further to the left, go all the way around, and then if this was your last shot here, then just take another one. And normally I would, after I've done that, I'd normally then take one with my hand in front of it like this. It just means that when you bring it into Lightroom, you can kind of easily identify which group of images are all to be stitched together. Now, one of the things which is good if you actually take that extra image a little bit wider is that whenever you do stitch it together, it gives you a little bit of leeway to crop in. Because what you don't want happening is having something just at the edge of the frame, and then whenever it stitches together, you possibly lose that because you have to crop in. So always go a little bit wider than you need to. Another thing with this for the panos is I have the 5-second timer on this here. Because I'm shooting with the longer focal length, you kind of tend to find that any sort of movement at all can just create that little bit of camera shake, and then what you don't want to happen is whenever you get home and you've one image maybe bang in the middle of the pano which is just a little bit soft, and that's more than likely just been caused with a little bit of movement. So a 5-second delay, even a 10-second if you have it, is really helpful, just to make sure that you get those really sharp shots. So I'm going to grab this first pano. So I probably want this to be my first one, so I'm just going to go a little bit wider, 5-second delay, and then I'm literally going to just follow this the whole way through. Okay, so the next tip is zoom straight in. Try and isolate a subject. In this composition, I've got a row, lots of pretty straight looking trees, and I've just zoomed in, and what I've done is I've actually focused on the front tree, but I'm shooting it at f4, so I'm not shooting f11, f8 or whatever. And really what I'm wanting to do is try and blur the bluebells, because whenever you blur them and you focus in on a subject like a tree trunk, it actually makes it look like there's more bluebells there than there actually is, because there's this lovely blanket of purple colour or blue colour, and it's all kind of that lovely bokeh as well. So we've got some really nice light hitting the trees, so that's kind of my emphasis here. And I'm just letting the rest of the bluebells kind of just blur out. So yeah, don't always shoot at f11. Play about with your apertures, maybe choose a shallower depth of field and just like zoom in, just forget about the whole big scene, just zoom in on a subject. And yeah, really like this. Okay, next tip is use side lighting. So I've come up this morning, sun rose over in that direction there, so I'm shooting back here. I came down about an hour after sunrise, and we've got this really lovely low side lighting, and it's coming in from over here. So what I'm finding is the bluebells are having these lovely shafts of light coming across the way, lovely big long shadows, and the trees that I'm shooting, half of the side of the tree is being hit by the sun, the other side's in shade. So the light is absolutely beautiful, and you've got some really lovely dappled light in the leaves as well. So next tip is use side lighting, and if you can, try and get up really early or shoot it really late in the evening when the light's much lower, because it's going to be softer, it's going to be warmer, and the shadows are just going to look, it's going to look amazing. So next tip is lens choice. And earlier I've been shooting with the 70-200 quite a bit. I find it gives me really nice compression, so zooming right in. It is an f4 lens, so you do get a certain degree of nice kind of blurred bokeh, but it's probably not amazing. I do have the 16-35, which I haven't actually used yet this morning, but I quite like, if I'm shooting the big wide vistas right up into the trees, I'll probably pop this one on, which will obviously give me a very different shot to the 70-200. What I have on the front now is a little 55mm 1.8 lens, and the reason I'm using it is just even the difference in moving from the 70-200, which was only an f4 lens. This 55 is a 1.8, so I found a little clump of trees, some nice bluebells on the carpet, on the floor of the forest. I'm just waiting for a little bit of side light coming in, but I'm shooting right down at 1.8 or f2, and it is really giving me a really nice bokeh. So even though it's only around 55mm, just the difference in jumping from a 1.8 lens to an f4 lens can make a big difference as well. The other thing I find this little thing is really useful for, I don't have a macro lens, so I find it's quite good for shooting little close-ups of the bluebells, maybe trying to isolate a little clump of them, and then really blur out the background, because whenever you go in that close, your depth of field is getting really shallow when you're shooting at 1.8. So yeah, the tip, just play about with whatever lenses you've got. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and buy a full big bag of lenses, but sometimes people might think that the only lens they can use for bluebells would be like a wide angle lens, because they're trying to get the whole big vista in. But use whatever other lenses you have, try a few different techniques, play about with your aperture, and I reckon you'll come away with a few different shots that you wouldn't normally have if you've just stuck to the wide angle lens. Okay, so the final tip I'm going to share, this thing here, get rid of it. Hand holding, I am able to hand hold, I'm still shooting at ISO 100, at f2.2 and I'm shooting at like an 800th of a second, so absolutely no issue. Yes, the tripod is useful, it slows you down, helps you figure out your composition, essential for panos pretty much, but sometimes camera, lens, take a walk, take a wander about, get down low, stand up high, crouch down, you know, just look at different angles, look at different compositions. Much freer just to wander about, and you can move things really fast, react to the light. And sometimes you'll find that actually not using a tripod gives you a little bit more freedom. If you're wanting to do long exposures for any other kind of photography, all that sort of stuff, obviously that's different. But for the likes of this, once you've got your other shots, just put the tripod away, grab a lens and just go for a little wander.